So do you want this one? Do you want
I'm recording already. I'll totally use what you just said.
Okay. You're freezing.
It's gross too.
It's hard not to feel anxious and stressed all the time. Maybe why we need literature and literary readings, like literature and literary readings, a reading that Eileen gave at a bookstore in San Francisco. Eileen here with us in Experiments and Disorders. I think it's, what do you think?
Welcome to Dixon Place TV. We have Experiments and Disorders. I'm Christen Clifford.
I'm Tom Cole.
Experiments and Disorders for 10 years, right, Tom?
That's correct. And for this past year, we've been doing these online events, and we're thrilled to have you with us tonight. Normally, we're in the lounge at Dixon Place at 161A Christie Street, and this is the juncture where we might point out the exit and encourage you to have a drink at the nonprofit bar. But since we can't do that, we're going to encourage
you to have a cup of tea or a cocktail. Dixon Place is always taking donations. If you would have had a drink at the bar and you feel like going over to the website and giving them a donation, surely be appreciated.
If you've never been to Dixon Place is one of really a landmark cultural institution in the city that dedicates all its resources and all its space and time and energy to supporting, developing, and presenting new work at all stages of development, from theater to performance art to burlesque to puppetry to circus, literature, and even film.
Check out what else is on DPTV. Tom and I have loved collaborating. We have collaborated for a really long time, almost 20 years maybe.
Yes.
We're going to collaborate on COVID sex encounters. Stay tuned for what that will be. It'll be part of a Dixon Place fundraiser at the end of October.
The fundraiser is called the Raising Cane Campaign, and it's going to happen on different dates throughout October. So keep your eyes peeled for an e-blast or check out the website.
Please keep all of our downtown institutions in your hearts and in your wallets if you can. We really need it. We don't know when we're going to be coming back live, so stay safe, everybody. Wear your masks.
Welcome to Experiments and Disorders.
Welcome to Experiments and Disorders.
Welcome to Dixon Place.
Dixon Place.
Welcome to Dixon Place.
Welcome. Thanks for having us in your home.
Thanks for tuning in.
We are so lucky to have tonight with us at Experiments and Disorders, Fayemi Shakur
and Jodi Lin.
Fayemi Shakur is a writer, interdisciplinary artist, and arts advocate. Her writing has been featured in international and national outlets, including the New York Times, Hyperallergic, CNN Style, Vice, the International Review of African American Art, Nueva Luz Photographic Journal, High Side Magazine, and MFON, Women Photographers in the African Diaspora, among others. She has done residencies in critical studies, artist in residence at the Center for Photography in Newark, as well as a feminist in residence at Project for Empty Space, and a residency at the Center for Photography. Please welcome Fayemi Shakur.
Hello. Thank you, Dixon Place and Christen Clifford, for inviting me to share a reading with you all. I'm going to be reading one of my favorite Black feminist thinkers, writers, and poets, Audre Lorde. I'll share one of her poems, and then I'll read one of her essays. First, the poem, A Litany for Survival. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone, for those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways coming and going, in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward, at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures, like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. For those of us who were imprinted with fear, like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, for by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hope to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak remembering we were never meant to survive. A litany for survival. I love that poem. Next, I'm going to read such a powerful essay, one of my favorites, The Uses of the Erotic as Power. If you've never read this essay, I encourage you to return to it after this reading. There are many kinds of power, used and unused, acknowledged or otherwise. The erotic is a resource within each of us that lies in a deeply female and spiritual plane, firmly rooted in the power of our unexpressed or unrecognized feeling. In order to perpetuate itself, every oppression must corrupt or distort those various sources of power within the culture of the oppressed that can provide energy for change. For women, this has meant a suppression of the erotic as a considered source of power and information within our lives. We have been taught to suspect this resource, vilified, abused, and devalued within Western society. On the one hand, the superficially erotic has been encouraged as a sign of female inferiority. On the other hand, women have been made to suffer and to feel both contemptible and suspect by virtue of its existence. It is a short step from there to the false belief that only the suppression of the erotic within our lives and consciousness can women be truly strong. But that strength is illusory, for it is fashioned within the context of male models of power. As women, we have come to distrust that power which rises from our deepest and non-rational knowledge. We have been warned against it all our lives by the male world, which values the depth of feeling enough to keep women around in order to exercise it in service of men, but which fears this same depth too much to examine the possibilities of it within themselves. So women are maintained at a distant, inferior position to be physically milked, much the same way ants maintain colonies to provide a life-giving substance for their masters. But this erotic offers a well of replenishing and provocative force to the woman who does not fear its revelation, nor succumb to the belief that sensation is enough. The erotic has often been misnamed by men and used against women. It has been made into the confused, the trivial, the psychotic, the plastic-sized sensation. For this reason, we have often turned away from the exploration and consideration of the erotic as a source of power and information, confusing it with its opposite, the pornographic. But pornography is a direct denial of the power of the erotic, for it represents the suppression of true feeling. Pornography emphasizes sensation without feeling. The erotic is a measure between the beginnings of our sense of self and the chaos of our strongest feelings. It is an intense sense of satisfaction to which, once we have experienced it, we know we can aspire. For having the fullness of this depth of feeling and recognizing its power and honor and self-respect, we can require no less of ourselves. It is never easy to demand the most from ourselves, from our lives, from our work. To encourage excellence is to go beyond the encouraged mediocrity of our society. But giving in to the fear of feeling and working to capacity is a luxury only the unintentional can afford. And the unintentional are those who do not wish to guide their own destinies. This internal requirement toward excellence, which we learn from the erotic, must not be misconstrued as demanding the impossible from ourselves nor from others. Such a demand incapacitates everyone in the process. For the erotic is not a question only of what we do, it is a question of how acutely and fully we can feel in the doing. Once we know the extent to which we are capable of feeling, that sense of satisfaction and completion, we can then observe which of our various life endeavors bring us closest to that fullness. The aim of each thing we do is to make our lives and the lives of our children richer and more possible. Within the celebration of the erotic, in all our endeavors, my work becomes a conscious decision, a longed-for bed which I enter gratefully and from which I rise up empowered. Of course, women so empowered are dangerous. So we are taught to separate the erotic demand from most vital areas of our lives other than sex. And the lack of concern for the erotic root and satisfactions of our work is felt in our disaffection from so much of what we do. For instance, how often do we truly love our work even at its most difficult? The principal horror of any system which defines the good in terms of profit rather than in terms of human need, or which defines human need to the exclusion of the psychic and emotional components of that need, the principal horror of such a system is that it robs our work of its erotic value, its erotic power and life appeal and fulfillment. Such a system reduces work to a travesty of necessities, a duty by which we earn bread or oblivion for ourselves and those we love. But this is tantamount to blinding a painter and then telling her to improve her work and to enjoy the act of painting. It is not only next to impossible, it is also profoundly cruel. As women, we need to examine the ways in which our world can be truly different. I am speaking here of the necessity for reassessing the quality of all aspects of our lives and of our work and of how we move toward and through them. The very word erotic comes from the Greek word eros, the personification of love in all its aspects, born of chaos and personifying creative power and harmony. When I speak of the erotic, then, I speak of it as an assertion of the life force of women, of that creative energy empowered, and the knowledge and use of which we are now reclaiming in our language, our history, our dancing, our loving, our work, our lives. There are frequent attempts to equate pornography and eroticism, two diametrically opposed uses of the sexual. Because of these attempts, it has been fashionable to separate the spiritual, psychic, and emotional from the political, to see them as contradictory. What do you mean a poetic revolutionary, a meditating gun runner? In the same way, we have attempted to separate the spiritual and the erotic, thereby reducing the spiritual to a world of flattened effect, a world that aspires to feel nothing. But nothing is farther from the truth. The severe abstinence of such a plight becomes the ruling obsession, and it is not one of self-discipline, but of self-abnegation. The dichotomy between the spiritual and the political is also false, resulting from an incomplete attention to our erotic knowledge. For the bridge which connects them is formed by the erotic, the sensual, those physical, emotional, and psychic expressions of what is deepest and strongest and richest within each of us, being shared, the passions of love and its deepest meanings. Beyond the superficial, the considered phrase, "it feels right to me," acknowledges the strength of the erotic into a true knowledge. For what that means is the first and most powerful guiding light toward any understanding. An understanding is a handmaiden which can only wait upon or clarify that knowledge deeply born. The erotic is the nurturer or nursemaid of all our deepest knowledge. The erotic functions for me in several ways, and the first is in providing the power which comes from sharing deeply any pursuit with another person. The sharing of joy, whether physical, emotional, psychic, or intellectual, forms a bridge between the sharers, which can be the basis for understanding much of what is not shared between them and lessens the threat of their difference. Another important way in which the erotic connection functions is the open and fearless underlining of my capacity for joy. In the way my body stretches to music and opens in response, hearkening to its deepest rhythms, so every level upon which I sense also opens the erotically satisfying experience, whether it is dancing, building a bookcase, writing a poem, examining an idea. That self-connection shared is a measure of the joy which I know myself to be capable of feeling, a reminder of my capacity for feeling. And that deep and irreplaceable knowledge of my capacity for joy comes to demand from all of my life that it be lived within the knowledge that such satisfaction is possible and does not have to be called marriage, not God, nor an afterlife. This is one reason why the erotic is so feared and so often relegated to the bedroom alone when it is recognized at all. For once we begin to feel deeply all the aspects of our lives, we begin to demand from ourselves and from our life pursuits that they feel in accordance with that joy which we know ourselves to be capable of. Our erotic knowledge empowers us, becomes a lens through which we scrutinize all aspects of our existence, forcing us to evaluate those aspects honestly in terms of their relative meaning within our lives. And this is a grave responsibility projected from within each of us, not to settle for the convenient, the shoddy, the conventionally expected, nor the merely safe. We have been raised to fear the yes within ourselves, our deepest cravings, but once recognized, those which do not enhance our future lose their power and can be altered. The fear of our desires keeps them suspect and indiscriminately powerful. For to suppress any truth is to give it strength beyond endurance. The fear that we cannot grow beyond whatever distortions we may find within ourselves keeps us docile and loyal and obedient, externally defined, and leads us to accept many facets of our oppression as women. When we live outside ourselves, and by that I mean on external directives only rather than from our internal knowledge and needs, when we live away from those erotic guides from within ourselves, then our lives are limited by external and alien forms, and we conform to the needs of a structure that is not based on human need, let alone in individuals. But when we begin to live from within outward, in touch with the power of the erotic within ourselves, and allowing that power to inform and illuminate our actions upon the world around us, Then we begin to be responsible to ourselves in the deepest sense. For as we begin to recognize our deepest feelings, we begin to give up of necessity, being satisfied with suffering and self-negation, and with the numbness which so often seems like their only alternative in our society. Our acts against oppression become integral with self, motivated and empowered from within. In touch with the erotic, I become less willing to accept powerlessness or those other supplied states of being which are not native to me, such as resignation, despair, self-effacement, depression, self-denial. And yes, there is a hierarchy. There is a difference between painting a back fence and writing a poem, but only one of quantity. And there is, for me, no difference between writing a good poem and moving into sunlight against the body of a woman I love. This brings me to the last consideration of the erotic. To share the power of each other's feelings is different from using another's feelings as we would use a Kleenex. When we look the other way from our experience, erotic or otherwise, we use rather than share the feelings of those others who participate in the experience with us. And use without consent of the used is abuse. In order to be utilized, our erotic feelings must be recognized. The need for sharing deep feeling is a human need, but within the European American tradition, this need is satisfied by certain prescribed erotic comings together. These occasions are almost always characterized by a simultaneous looking away, a pretense of calling them something else, whether a religion, a fit, mob violence, or even playing doctor. And this misnaming of the need and the deed give rise to the distortion which results in pornography and obscenity, the abuse of feeling. When we look away from the importance of the erotic in the development and sustenance of our power, or when we look away from ourselves as we satisfy our erotic needs in concert with others, we use each other as objects of satisfaction rather than share our joy in the satisfying, rather than make connection with our similarities and our differences. To refuse to be conscious of what we are feeling at any time, however comfortable that might seem, is to deny a large part of the experience and to allow ourselves to be reduced to the pornographic, the abused, and the absurd. The erotic cannot be felt secondhand. As a Black lesbian feminist, I have a particular feeling, knowledge, and understanding for those sisters with whom I have danced hard, played, or even fought. This deep participation has often been the forerunner for joint concerted actions not possible before. But this erotic charge is not easily shared by women who continue to operate under an exclusively European American male tradition. I know it was not available to me when I was trying to adapt my consciousness to this mode of living and sensation. Only now I find more and more women-identified women brave enough to risk sharing the erotic's electrical charge without having to look away and without distorting the enormously powerful and creative nature of that exchange. Recognizing the power of the erotic within our lives can give us the energy to pursue genuine change within our world, rather than merely settling for a shift of characters in the same weary drama. For not only do we touch our most profoundly creative source, but we do that which is female and self-affirming in the face of racist, patriarchal, and anti-erotic society. Audre Lorde.
It's my great pleasure to introduce our next writer, Jodi Lin. And I'm just very enchanted with the poems that they're going to read for us tonight. And I'm going to read a little bit about them. Jodi Lin is a New York City-based writer and filmmaker, a graduate of the ART Institute at Harvard and Sarah Lawrence College. They have also been invited to complete a course of study at the Maysles Documentary Center. Their short film, Borte, Queen of Tibet, a fearlessly honest autobiography about their recovery from schizoaffective disorder, was nominated for the Festival Prize at the Soho International Film Festival and received numerous other screenings. Their current work, The Tenderness of Glass, is a long-form narrative told through poetry and prose. Believing that love is a political act of resistance, the theme of timeless love dominates writing. Other writing include Centuries Strong, a feature-length screenplay about reincarnation, and The Pastimes of the Queen of Tibet, a novella inspired by the diaries of Anais Nin. Please join me in welcoming Jodi Lin.
Hi, my name is Jodi Lin, and I'd like to thank Tom Cole and Dixon Place for inviting me to share my work with you today. I'm very excited to be reading a few pieces from my book, The Tenderness of Glass, as part of Experiments in Disorders. So a little bit about me. In 2010, I was hospitalized at Bellevue Psychiatric for what seemed to be a psychotic break, which I've later come to understand was more of a spiritual crisis, because my recovery there was both mental and spiritual. And so while I was there one day in like arts and crafts or whatever that is, that arts and crafts time, I took this crayon and I started this diary, because we weren't allowed to use pens or pencils. They were afraid that we might hurt each other or hurt ourselves with the pencils or the pens. So I started this diary with crayon, and 10 years later this crayon diary has become a long-form narrative told in poetry and prose called The Tenderness of Glass. And in addition to this diary, this book was inspired by two other texts, the Tibetan Book of the Dead and Milton's Paradise Lost. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is a Buddhist manual for how to assist the dead to ease their consciousness into a favorable rebirth. And Paradise Lost is a epic poem about the downfall of man. So both of these texts really moved and inspired me and really kind of terrified me, because I'm afraid of both a unfavorable rebirth and of the devil, because I was raised Christian. So this fear kind of pushed me into my own creative investigation of life and death. And so I'm self-taught on Buddhism, but what I understand is the Tibetan Buddhists believe in the cycle of samsara, which is the cycle of suffering that is living, dying, luminosity, and rebirth. And this cycle of suffering is that, lifetime after lifetime, we're born into this cycle or reborn into this cycle until we've repaid our karma, which is action based on intention, which results in consequence. So lifetime after lifetime, we're repaying this karma until we ascend to a state of nirvana. And so in The Tenderness of Glass, I've broken each section into one of the bardos that it's inspired by. And I will read you just a little bit from it today. So this is from The Tenderness of Glass. and it's part 1, the Bardo of Life, piece number 1. I could hear the crack of the ice from where I stood on the rocks, a symphony of broken ice like shards of glass rubbing close together, a song yet to be written. Not that I have an ear for music, it was M. I was thinking of M and missing him. I was thinking about one of the many conversations we had. It was his birthday, he told me. Deep in winter, after a heavy snowfall, he said, as we strolled and talked along the Brooklyn Bridge promenade. He had come to the water to die. Too afraid to jump, he lay down in the snow, spread out like a snow angel. What does fallen snow sound like, he thought. And as he lay there listening, he could hear the sound of crackling, crashing ice, the Hudson River frozen over. Ah, baby, I said. Sad that he wanted to die, but so in love with the way that he saw the world. I was mesmerized at the time, or was it death? Love and death. I had come here in winter looking for him, the memory of him and the emotion I felt the night that we strolled. I wanted to forgive him. I wanted to be close again. From the Bardo of Life, 2. They, them, now, then, missing, found. Another breath in, another out, in and out. Don't know when it began, but suddenly it was over. Why do so many queers, why do all queers have so many tattoos and smoke so many cigarettes? I wanted to be straight, and then I met M, and it was over and over and over. 3. In the Asia of the ancients, tribal women tattoo each other to keep from being stolen into sex. A kept woman, I have 4 tattoos, all acquired within the year that I fell in love. A flame lotus, a peacock feather, Narayana, a moth with evil eyes for wings, each one a map of my freedom, each one for you. Now this is piece 4, and it's loosely inspired by somebody who's very dear to me, my grandfather. So this is 4 in the Bardo of Life. He caught fish with his feet on his island, the one he would share with me even if I never asked. With strong, leathery hands, he built elaborate houses in trees. I was too small to climb there, but too big to carry up. So the stilted houses were mine to inherit when I was big enough, fearless enough to climb with bare feet and sun-kissed golden skin like him to that sweet shelter nestled there, misplaced and regal in a suburban backyard tree. Piece 5. She told me I was thin-skinned, she, with crooked fingers, she, bristles on a hairbrush, pain metal, combing thin skin from my tender scalp. There in the shower, naked and small, I stood on a small stool, the stool to make the reach easier on her back as the hot, hot water ran over me. She pressed on harder, she, the water salty now, she. Was it the tears? Was it the sea? Was it the blood that rose up from my heart to the bristles, pain metal, brushing my innocence with venom hands from her venom heart, she. Thin skin torn tender from this little girl whose little mouth told the lie that was the truth that ruined the family. her family name. Fast forward now, this is poem 8 in the Bardo of Life. I was a child and I wore red lipstick to bed. Fast forward now to poem 13. February 29th, 2010. I want to remember every detail, but my soul won't give it all back to me. I called the police and told them there were 3 human skulls under my bed. They came with hazmat. Finding no skulls, the line of questioning went something like this. Do you know what day it is, miss? Do you know where you are? Do you know who the president is? When was the last time that you ate? When was the last time that you slept? Did somebody hurt you or try to hurt you? Something like this. What did I say? I don't remember, but I didn't pass the test. They asked me to close my apartment window. They suggested I grab my coat. They suggested I grab my keys and ID. I put on my fanciest coat with my fanciest hat for some reason, handed my keys, phone, and ID to one of the officers as though she worked for me, and well, I was escorted to an ambulance. A technician took my vitals and gave me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that broke my 40-day almond milk fast. He assured me that I didn't need to worry, I was going somewhere safe. I wrote a letter that got the president shot. Could you take me to court? You have to show up for court or you'll be in even more trouble than you were in the first place. And I think I need a lawyer. Do you know what day it is? Oh God, I thought these questions again. But I realized I didn't know the answer. I shook my head. There's no court on Sunday, miss. It's Sunday, and President Obama is alive and well as far as I know. In fact, the first family just adopted a dog. So this is part 2 in the Bardo of Dying, which is about life after death, the first transition of this kind of rebirth phase, the Bardo of Dying. And this is part 2, poem 2:1. My lungs will take me. Eventually, in my 60s to 70s, something in the air will make it impossible for me to breathe. A problem the child will cure and take us all and our remains to nirvana. She was there to help my karma along. I couldn't figure out a way to get the sharps out, the used ones that I injected just underneath her skin. She was sick. The needles were sick. I grew sick. The invisible symptoms pursued me like my past life courtesan, a lover who loved me as I lay dying. He was long gone, the warrior king whose blood spread through the expanse of his imaginary kingdom. My kingdom was real, for the empire was mine. Even the air was mine to breathe in death as I chose it. I loved her and she grew sick. I kept her, not wanting her to let go. I was returning the favor from our past lives. My love, who pushed my karma along, she was mine, and as she lay dying in my arms, Samsara won me again. And lastly, again, this is about the reincarnation, the journey to the next life of this protagonist who, I didn't mention, this protagonist believes that she's the reincarnation of the Queen of Tibet. And so, yeah, this is poem 2 of part 2, the Bardo of Dying. This is the moment I feared the most. My intuition gave you to me. This premonition took you away. I take shelter humbly under your golden feet as we make love. As we make love, centuries pass between us. I've been chasing you for lifetimes to be with you in this way. At first your child, a beloved pet another, your cherished friend, your mother's sister, closer and closer to finally arrive here in bed with you, the canopy billowing. Its softness touches us intermittently as you adorn me with lifetimes of tenderness, bending like heated glass, sweet baby kisses, the strength of ages. I cried when we climaxed because I knew it would be our last time. Intuition gave you to me. This premonition took you away. What if I told you we would have other lives together, I say. I let go and you live on. And because I love you, I let go and you live on. In 49 days, I am reborn. My purpose, an undeniable love, a bond unlike any other. Mother to child, child to mother. I love you as you love me, again and again and again. Nirvana. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming tonight and for inviting us into your homes. We look forward to seeing you back at Dixon Place as soon as we're able to welcome you back live. We're really looking forward to having these events in person as soon as possible. But for the meantime, we appreciate your tuning in.
Thank you, Jodi and Fayemi. Really appreciate your work. I really need art in these times. I just need it. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting us into your homes. Please stay safe and have a wonderful evening.
Wear your mask. Wear your mask. Wear your mask.
Wear your masks.